The 1970s was a turbulent, dark decade for Great Britain. It was an era defined by economic instability, industrial strikes, rolling blackouts, and the infamous three-day work week. But nowhere was this chaos more visible than on the assembly lines of the nation's car manufacturers. In a desperate bid to survive foreign competition, British car companies rushed half-baked, poorly designed, and terribly constructed vehicles into local showrooms. The result wasn't just a collection of bad cars. It was a national embarrassment that left a generation of loyal British motorists feeling completely betrayed, broke, and filled with absolute rage. Today on UKTorque, we are stepping back into this dark chapter of motoring history to count down the 10 most hated British cars of the 1970s. These are the mechanical disasters that completely destroyed reputations, ruined driveways, and broke hearts. Stay with us until our number one spot, because it belongs to a futuristic wedge-shaped sports car that was supposed to save an entire empire, but instead dragged its company directly into the abyss of ultimate failure. Number 10. Morris Marina, the laziest recycled nightmare. We begin our countdown in 1971 with a car that British Leyland desperately needed to compete with the runaway success of the Ford Cortina, the Morris Marina. On paper, it was meant to be a simple, honest, and affordable mass-market family saloon that would keep the British workforce moving. It sold in huge numbers simply because fleet buyers and loyal traditionalists had few other domestic options. But beneath that bland, uninspiring steel body lay a mechanical crime. To save development money and time, British Leyland built the Marina by recycling heavily outdated components from the 1940s and 50s, including the ancient front suspension from the Morris Minor. The result was a driving experience that was utterly dreadful. The early Marinas suffered from a notorious design flaw called massive understeer, meaning that if you turned the steering wheel into a sharp corner on a wet day, the car would simply refuse to turn and plow straight ahead into the hedge. The build quality was shockingly poor, the handling was boat-like, and it felt dangerously outdated from the very first day it went on sale. Today, the Marina is remembered not with fond nostalgia, but with a lingering sense of resentment for being a lazy, corner-cutting machine that treated British buyers with complete disrespect. Number 9. Austin Allegro, the infamous square failure. If there is one car that symbolizes the total collapse of British industrial pride in the 1970s, it is the Austin Allegro. Launched in 1973 as the futuristic successor to the beloved Austin 1100, the Allegro was meant to showcase cutting-edge design and engineering. Instead, it became a national laughingstock and a global synonym for absolute failure. Everything about the Allegro went wrong. To save money on a new steering wheel production line, British Leyland famously equipped the car with a bizarre, rectangular steering wheel that they marketed as the Quartic wheel. Drivers absolutely hated it, finding it awkward to use and ugly to look at. Worse still was the abysmal quality control caused by constant factory strikes. The body shell lacked structural rigidity. It was a known fact that if you jacked the car up incorrectly to change a flat tire, the rear window would literally pop out and shatter on the road. The Hydraugas suspension system gave a bouncy, motion sickness-inducing ride, and the bulbous styling earned it the cruel nickname, the Flying Pig. The Allegro didn't just fail to win buyers. It actively drove a generation of loyal British motorists straight into the welcoming arms of reliable Japanese imports. Number 8. Triumph Stag, the heartbreak V8 disaster. Unlike the other bland family saloons on this list, the Triumph Stag was a car that people desperately wanted to love. Launched in 1970, it was an incredibly handsome, sophisticated four-seater Grand Tourer styled by the Italian master Giovanni Michelotti. With its elegant lines, pillarless side profile, and a target top designed for wind-in-the-hair cruising, it looked like a high-end luxury cruiser that would effortlessly rival Mercedes-Benz. But beneath that gorgeous Italian skin lay the most disastrously engineered engine in automotive history, Triumph's bespoke 3.0-liter V8. Instead of sourcing a reliable, proven V8, the company rushed their own complex engine design into production with catastrophic flaws. The cylinder heads were made of aluminum bolted to a cast-iron block, which expanded at different rates when hot, causing the head gaskets to blow constantly. The water pump was mounted too high, meaning that even a minor drop in coolant would cause the engine to immediately overheat, warping the entire metal structure. The timing chains would snap without warning, completely destroying the engine from the inside out. Driving a Stag in the 1970s was a game of Russian roulette. Owners would spend more time waiting for recovery trucks on the hard shoulder of the motorway than actually enjoying the road, turning a beautiful dream into an expensive, heartbreaking nightmare. Number 7. Hillman Avenger, the rusting disposable shell. Introduced in 1970 by the Roots Group under Chrysler's ownership, the Hillman Avenger was a conventional, rear-wheel drive family saloon designed to take on the Ford Escort. It was actually a reasonably decent car to drive, featuring sharp handling, a lively engine, and modern styling with distinctive hockey stick-shaped rear lights that looked quite smart on contemporary suburban avenues. But the Avenger possessed a fatal flaw that made it utterly hated as the years rolled on: the quality of its steel. During the 1970s, British steel manufacturing was plagued by cost-cutting and poor chemical treatments. The Avenger's body panels were so chemically unprotected and thin that they would begin to rust almost the moment the car left the showroom floor. Rainwater would get trapped inside the front wings and doors, causing the paint to bubble and the metal to literally flake away like wet cardboard. Within just a few short years of daily exposure to British winter salt and rain, an Avenger would structurally rot away to the point of mechanical collapse. Owners watched their hard-earned investments dissolve before their very eyes, transforming a promising family car into a disposable, rusting disaster that people couldn't get rid of fast enough. Number 6. Austin Maxi, the gearbox warfare saloon. The Austin Maxi, launched at the tail end of 1969 and carrying throughout the 1970s, was technically a highly advanced and practical concept. It was Alec Isagonis's final design, a spacious 5-door hatchback with front-wheel drive and a clever interior where all the seats could fold completely flat to create a makeshift double bed. It should have been the ultimate, forward-thinking family workhorse. But British Leyland ruined the execution with a mechanical setup that turned daily driving into an actual war. The Maxi was fitted with a brand-new 5-speed gearbox that utilized a highly primitive, flexible cable linkage system to connect the gear stick to the transmission. Shifting gears in a Maxi didn't feel mechanical. It felt like trying to stir a bucket of thick glue with a piece of wet string. Finding third or fourth gear was a complete guessing game, and drivers would frequently grind the gears or select the wrong ratio entirely while navigating busy junctions. The engine was unrefined and noisy, the build quality was plagued by assembly line negligence, and that frustrating, uncooperative gear shift made every single journey a stressful, exhausting experience that owners deeply resented. Number 5. Reliant Robin, the rolling 3-wheeled hazard. We arrive at a car that has become an immortal cultural icon, but for all the wrong reasons. The Reliant Robin. Launched in 1973, this fiberglass-bodied 3-wheeler was designed to exploit a specific loophole in British tax laws, allowing it to be driven on a cheap motorcycle license. For working-class families and retirees looking for ultra-economical transport during the fuel crisis, it seemed like a highly sensible financial choice. But the laws of physics do not care about tax loopholes. With 2 wheels at the back and only a single wheel at the front supporting the engine weight, the Reliant Robin was inherently unstable. If a driver took a corner just a fraction too quickly, or if they encountered a sharp gust of wind while turning a roundabout, the little fiberglass box would lose its balance, tip onto its side, and slide helplessly across the tarmac. It was a car that demanded constant, nervous caution. You couldn't drive it with any degree of enthusiasm without fearing a total rollover. Coupled with a noisy cabin, poor heating, and a social stigma that made its occupants the butt of every single joke in town, the Robin was a stressful, unstable hazard that owners quickly grew to despise. Number 4. Leyland Princess, the floundering wedge of disappointment. In 1975, British Leyland launched a striking, futuristic new flagship saloon simply called the Princess. Featuring a dramatic, aerodynamic wedge-shaped profile, a long wheelbase, and advanced hydrogous suspension, it was marketed as a highly sophisticated, upscale alternative to executive foreign cruisers. It was supposed to project an image of modern, elite status on the high street. Instead, it delivered a mountain of immense disappointment. Despite its avant-garde fastback shape, the designers inexplicably refused to give it a proper rear hatchback boot lid, opting instead for a tiny, awkward traditional trunk opening that made loading luggage a nightmare. Worse still was the mechanical execution. The advanced suspension system was notoriously unreliable, frequently leaking fluid and causing the heavy wedge body to sag miserably to one side like a wounded animal. The steering was heavy, the cabin plastics were cheap and rattled incessantly, and the build quality was so notoriously rushed that panels rarely aligned properly. It tried so hard to look like a high-status car of the future, but it ended up as a clunky, unreliable flop that left its owners feeling completely swindled. Number 3. Chrysler Sunbeam, the rushed assembly line shaker. By the late 1970s, the Linwood factory in Scotland was facing total closure, threatening thousands of jobs. To save the plant, the British government injected millions of pounds to fund a rushed development program for a new compact hatchback. The result was the 1977 Chrysler Sunbeam, a small three-door car put together in a record-breaking 19 months using recycled parts from the older Hillman Avenger. Because the development was so frantically rushed to meet government deadlines, the Sunbeam suffered from an absolute lack of engineering refinement. The body panels were put together with such poor tolerances that they would visibly shake and vibrate when driving at motorway speeds. The interior was a sea of the cheapest, sharpest gray plastic available, which would crack under the summer sun. Water leaks through the rear hatch were a permanent feature, turning the spare wheel well into a miniature rusty swimming pool. It was a car born out of desperation, built by a demoralized workforce on a rushed schedule, and the public instantly recognized it as a cynical, poorly assembled stopgap measure that lacked any real quality or soul. Number 2. Vauxhall Victor FE, the dissolving winter iceberg. The Vauxhall Victor FE series, launched in 1972, was a large, handsome executive saloon that featured sweeping, transatlantic styling inspired by General Motors' American designs. It offered a spacious cabin, a smooth ride, and a commanding presence on the road that initially attracted thousands of middle-class families and business reps who wanted to project an upscale image. But the Victor FE carried a hidden defect that turned it into one of the most hated disasters of its generation: catastrophic, rapid corrosion. Vauxhall used a specific type of recycled, untreated steel during this era that had a high level of impurities. The moment the car was exposed to wet British winters and road salt, a chemical reaction would trigger underneath the paint. The front wings, the sills, and the structural floor pans would rot away at a speed that defied belief, literally dissolving like an iceberg in warm water. It was not uncommon for a 4-year-old Victor FE to fail its MOT test completely due to severe structural rust that made the car completely unsafe to drive. Owners who had paid premium money watched their prized possessions turn into worthless piles of scrap metal in a matter of months, cementing the Victor FE's legacy as a total mechanical catastrophe. Number 1. Triumph TR7, the wedge that broke the empire. We arrive at our number 1 spot, the absolute ultimate flop of the entire 1970s decade, the Triumph TR7. Launched in 1974 with a massive global marketing campaign centered around the slogan, "The shape of things to come," the TR7 was meant to be the savior of the British sports car industry. It abandoned the classic curves of the TR6 in favor of a radical, geometric wedge shape designed to take the American market by storm. But the TR7 didn't save the empire, it permanently destroyed it. The radical design polarized public opinion instantly, but that was nothing compared to the absolute horror of its build quality. Initially manufactured at the strike-plagued Speak factory, the TR7 was assembled with a level of incompetence that borders on sabotage. The electrical systems were an absolute nightmare. Pop-up headlights would frequently fail, leaving one eye open and one eye closed in the dark, while the dashboard gauges would randomly stop working entirely. The 2.0-liter engine was prone to immediate head gasket failure. The carburetors were impossible to keep in tune, and the rear suspension linkages would snap under pressure. It was a sports car that was terrified of hard driving, breaking down constantly, and driving its owners to absolute madness. The TR7 became the ultimate symbol of everything that went wrong with British manufacturing in the 1970s. A bold, futuristic concept completely ruined by terrible execution. leaving a legacy of universal hatred that time can never wash away. The tragic history of these 10 motoring disasters serves as a powerful reminder of a dark era when corner-cutting and industrial chaos completely derailed a once proud automotive superpower. Subscribe to UKTorque for more unvarnished, honest chapters from our rich automotive past, and let us know in the comments below. Did you or your family ever have the misfortune of owning one of these 1970s legends of regret?